Hey everyone, my name is Danielle and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my 5 stars that I've read for the third quarter of 2022. This last quarter, especially August and September, have been, I think, my best reading months of the entire year. I have read a lot of books, and I think I have the most 5 stars in this quarter, in those 2 months, than I have in the entire year so far. So I have 10 books that I'm going to talk about, 10 books that I gave 5 stars in the last 3 months. That just, to me, it's just very exciting for me to have that many, because I have been struggling with my enjoyment level for reading. I have been reading a lot, I have been enjoying books, but I think this is the most 5 stars I've given in a quarter all year. So for me to have 10 books that I gave 5 stars in 3 months is just makes me so happy that I'm actually enjoying reading again. So we're just gonna go through the 10 books that I gave 5 stars. These are in no particular order of which I liked least to most. I'm just gonna go through what I enjoyed, we're gonna talk about them, and here we go. I'm going to start with 2 books that are nonfiction. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, but for some reason I picked both of these up because they had audiobooks and I was just looking for something a little bit differently. So I actually gave 2 nonfiction books 5 stars. The first one I'm going to talk about is I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. This is a true crime kind of novel that follows a woman's search for the Golden State Killer. She actually coined the term Golden State Killer because prior to that he was actually called, I think, the East Valley Rapist, something like that. I can't specifically remember what his name is. I think it was East Area Rapist because they call him the Ear. How she found out all of this information, connecting all of these pieces, trying to figure out if she can find out who he was. And I loved listening to this book. She is a really good writer. I loved the way she described things, how she kept my interest throughout this entire book on her trying to find this killer. I'd never really heard much about the Golden State Killer. I don't follow a ton of true crime. I used to be really into it when I was younger, but I never really followed this case. So it was really interesting to hear her finding all this. Unfortunately, she did die before this book was published and before the man was caught. But since then, since this book came out originally, the Golden State Killer has been identified and found, and some say that this helped, even though the police say that it didn't help. But I just thought it was such a fascinating read. Her writing is just so good. There is a couple lines in here that like kind of made me tear up on how she talks about how this man is going to be caught for what he did. And I just really enjoyed reading this, listening to it. I thought the audiobook was amazing. So I had to give it 5 stars because it was just such an intriguing read. The other nonfiction book was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jenna McCurdy. This is her memoir about how she basically had to live her mother's dream of being a star, the eating disorders that kind of got pushed on her a little bit, and dealing with some very uncomfortable situations when she was on the set of iCarly. And I just loved listening to this. She goes through quite a bit of terrible things, especially due to the way her mother acted and treated her. It was very emotionally manipulative. There is some very uncomfortable things that she talks about, and she's very open and honest about what she went through, what her mom did to her, and the way she treated her. And it was just fascinating, and I felt so bad for Jenna McCurdy for having to go through this, having to have all of these traumas in her past. But I thought it was a really well done memoir. It was very intriguing and it made me really sad and emotional for her, but I enjoyed listening to her story, and I'm thankful that she was actually able to write this, and hopefully it'll help her, you know, kind of deal with some of the traumas in her past. But I thought it was really well done, and I definitely gave that one 5 stars. The next one I'm going to talk about is the only sci-fi book that I gave 5 stars, and that was A Prayer for the Crown Child by Becky Chambers. So this is the sequel to A Psalm for the Wild-Built. So this follows 2 characters that are in a world where robots gain sentience. They kind of decide to leave to live their own lives. The main character, the monk, is the first person to have seen a robot in many, many years, and the robot's question is just like, what does humanity need? And they kind of go on a journey for him to learn about humanity, and I just love these books. They are cozy sci-fi, questioning your place in the world. They're soft, they're sweet, and I just absolutely love them, and they always just make me so emotional and happy, and I just love them. They're a great time. If you want a short little cozy sci-fi, I definitely recommend these. The next one that I have is one I actually don't own yet. I have ordered a copy because I listened to the audiobook and just loved it so much, and that is Our Wives Under the Sea. This is a horror fiction novel that follows these two women as they kind of navigate, one of them returning from this underwater mission, and just the weird occurrences that start happening after she returns from this mission. It kind of follows both of them, one during the current timeline where, you know, the main character is dealing with her wife being weird, these weird situations, these really uncomfortable things that are happening to them from the result of her returning from this mission. And then we kind of go back in time a little bit to learn what happened on the ship during this mission. And it was just so interesting. It was very uncomfortable. I don't know if it's so it wasn't necessarily creepy. It was very uncomfortable at times. And I don't like deep water. It freaks me out. And so there's a big talk on that because they are stuck at the bottom of the ocean. And it just made me so uncomfortable a lot of the times. But this is definitely more of an exploration of their relationship and the way they got together, the way they are with each other, versus a full-on scary novel. And I just absolutely loved reading it. The vibes and the atmosphere in this book were just so good. The audiobook is really good as well. I loved the narration style that they did, kind of going back and forth between these two characters, talking about their relationship, how everything wasn't perfect, but how you can't describe to someone else how you were in love with someone. And I loved this. I loved this book so much. So I had to give it 5 stars because I absolutely loved it. I bought my own copy. I'm waiting for it to arrive because I had to buy the UK version. I loved that cover way more than I liked the US version. And I loved this book so much. The next one that I'm going to talk about is Goodbye Paradise by Sarina Bowen. I do believe that she wrote this under a pseudonym though. This follows 2 men who were born and raised on this cult-like place called Paradise. And it is a polygamous cult. They are kind of seen, especially Josh, one of the main characters, as seen as lesser because he's not as strong as the other men. When he is kicked out, Caleb goes to basically kind of help him. They run away from this cult and are kind of on a journey to survive out in a world that they never really knew much about. They end up with another former cult member and are falling in love, dealing with hiding their relationship because they are worried of their survival if they are, you know, gay out to people. So they're hiding their relationship, they're falling in love, figuring things out, trying to survive in the real world. And I loved this so much. I listened to the audiobook, and this book is just sweet and soft for a lot of it. There is some angst that especially happens at the end or throughout it, but I just really loved reading this story, them falling in love, wanting to be together, doing everything they can to be together. And I loved how often this book didn't go the direction that I was expecting. So there's so many times that this could have led to some really annoying plot that to break them up or keep them apart, or, you know, introduce a conflict that probably would have annoyed me, that it never actually went that way. And I really appreciated the way the author did this book. I just loved reading it. It was so sweet, so cute, and one of my favorite romances of the year right now. I just had such a good time reading this, so I had to give it 5 stars because I have already listened to the audiobook and then reread an ebook version of it just because I loved it so much, and it just makes me happy. And now we're gonna go into my 5-star fantasy books. So the first one that I have for fantasy is The Drowned Woods by Emily Lloyd Jones. This is a YA fantasy that follows a woman who is the last water diviner. She is tasked by this person that she used to know growing up to steal from the prince that basically ruined her life. He made her do some really horrible things that hurt a lot of people. She ran away, and now she is tasked to steal something from him to get back at him, basically. And I really, really loved this. It has water magic, which I absolutely love. It has a heist, which I love. And it kind of has a slow burn, angsty romance, which is one of my favorite things. And I just loved the twists and turns in this. I don't think it's necessarily like surprising the direction this went in, but I just loved this world and these characters. I really hope that we get more from them. This is a standalone at the moment, but I would love to see other things in this world because I love water magic. I think it's just so interesting. And yeah, I just really enjoyed my whole time reading this, and I want more. It made me want more from this world and these characters. The next one that I read is a book that I've been trying to read for quite a while, but I finally at least got to the first one, and that is Jade City by Fonda Lee. This is a mafia style fantasy story that follows these groups of clans that are in the midst of a growing war, a coming war, and their kind of political admirations and maneuvers as they try to outmaneuver each other. And it was just so good. I took a long time reading this one and one other one. I took my time reading this, but I loved all of these characters. Hilo is one of my favorite characters. I loved his personality. He is just that wild character, but he's so family oriented and he just wants to protect his family even though he doesn't. He's kind of a hothead and he just jumps into trouble all the time. Their family dynamics in this are amazing, and I loved reading this story. I'm so excited to continue. I'm very nervous because I've seen so many people cry because of this series. I have not started the second or third one yet, though I do really want to at least attempt to get to the second one by the end of the year. I loved this. I'm so excited I was able to read it this year, and I can't wait to continue. The next one that I actually have 2 copies of. It is a very popular book. Everyone seems to really, really enjoy that. And it is Babel. I have both the Illumicrate edition. This is the sprayed edges, but I have the Illumicrate edition, and I have the Fairy Loot edition. And this is a dark academia fantasy critique on academia, higher education, and it follows a boy named Robin as he is basically raised to join Babel, which is a college of education, a center of education for translation at Oxford. And it deals with some very heavy topics, specifically colonization and racism. Sexism is a big part of this as well. And I really, really enjoyed reading this. This one took me a very long time to read. There is footnotes. It is very educational, and I just really, really enjoyed my time reading this. The ending did make me cry, even though I don't think it was necessarily predictable. I think it was inevitable. It is an inevitable ending, I believe, but it really did hit me hard the way these characters are, what happened to everyone. It felt very realistic. For being a book with magic in it, it felt very realistic, like this is how the world works. And I just really, really enjoyed my time. I understand why everyone is praising this so highly. I agree. I think it is great. It is a great book, but it is one that you do take your time with. It is not a quick read. It is not fast. It is over 500 pages, and it feels like it's over 500 pages, but in a good way. It's a book that I wanted to keep reading even though I was taking my time with it. So I absolutely loved this book as well. Definitely keeping both my copies of it too. But yeah, this one was just so good. And the last one that I have might still be my favorite book of the year so far, but I'll have to see once it gets closer to the end. But that's This Woven Kingdom by Tahereh Mafi. This is a YA fantasy that follows this woman who is basically the lost princess of the Jinn. She is just trying to survive after her, basically all of her people were murdered. There are some left, but she has to hide who she is, so she pretends to be a handmaiden, a servant, a seamstress to survive. when there is a run-in that happens with the prince who's supposed to be the king of this country, things kind of start spiraling. There is a slow burn enemies to romance in this that I just absolutely loved. Her character is one of my favorites, and both of their characters. I loved both, you know, this lost princess and the prince. I loved their dynamic. I loved the slow burn nature of the romance. This is more vibes than plot, I feel like, but I just loved the slow burn nature of everything, the romance, the plot, all of it just kind of slowly building up to the end. And I just loved reading this so, so much. I cannot wait for the next one. It doesn't come out till January. We're getting there. But I just know when I read that one, I'm just gonna want the third book, and that one's not gonna come out till the year after, and I'm gonna be very sad about it. But I just loved this book so much. I'm so happy I read it. All these books I kind of picked up on a whim, but this one was just so good. I loved it. So there, or at least are the ones I own for 5-star reads. I'm just so happy that I'm loving this stuff. I cannot wait for the rest of the year. I hope these next 3 months, I love everything. I hope I get twice as many 5 stars as I have right here. I cannot wait because I love these books so, so much. So let me know in the comments below, what are some 5-star reads that you've read recently? I would love to hear, and I will see you next time.